It's time for Supply Chain Now. Broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Heard around the world, Supply Chain Now spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
Hey, good morning. Scott Luton and Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's show. Good morning, Greg. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I am, it's early. People can listen to this any time of day, but I think it's fair for them to know we are all up early in the morning, and Rick even earlier than us. There, I did it again, right. Didn't I?
You're letting the cat out of the bag of our featured guest.
You can see his name, so.
Well, today, as Greg is alluding to, we've got a global leader in the supply chain industry, a titan of trade associations in particular. So looking forward to diving in. You like that, huh?
Alliteration. I love it.
Looking forward to diving in with Rick Blasgen with CSCMP in just a moment. But, stay tuned because you're going to be able to really increase your supply chain IQ and get a sense of the industry here today. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, Greg, what do we invite folks to do?
They should subscribe. Don't you think, Scott? I really think they should subscribe and go to supplychainnowradio.com and check out all of the shows.
That's right. That's right.
We do some pretty interesting stuff, I think. Let's ask Rick.
There's so much going on in the world of global supply chain. You're publishing a podcast every day even, and we're still scratching the surface. But regardless, We're here to increase your supply chain IQ. With no further ado, I want to bring in our featured guest here, Rick Blasgen, President and CEO of CSCMP, which we love our acronyms in this space, the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals. Rick, good morning.
Good morning, Scott. Good morning, Greg. It's great to be with you. I really appreciate the opportunity to have a chat today.
Yeah, it's great having you with us.
Absolutely. Right. We've, with us both being in the metro Atlanta area, we've really enjoyed our collaboration in recent years with the Atlanta Council of CSCMP, Atlanta Roundtable.
Right.
And really looking forward to kind of putting our finger on the pulse at the global level of CSCMP and kind of getting your thoughts on what's going on in what, as we all know, is a very unique year. But before we dive into business, Greg, we want to get to know Rick better, right?
Let's do that. There are probably a lot of people listening that know you, but we have listeners all around the world. So tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe even a little bit about where you're from, some other interesting tidbits about your life.
Sure. Well, I'll start by saying I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, a little town called Oak Forest, Illinois. Grew up there, and just had a great childhood. For the most part, was going through high school. My father was always had a job. Then he always had extra businesses, and one of the interesting things that sort of shaped my life in an early age. He had a couple of pizza places, and I would go help him make pizzas on the weekend. And one day there was a guitar there, so I picked that up. There was a book, started playing guitar, and next thing you know, I was in a garage band in our neighborhood and started playing songs, and that's how I got into music and had a
what was the name of the band, Rick?
Oh gosh, who knows? They were they were many and wide, believe me, and probably
garage
didn't know what the hell they meant. But so we used to play at high schools and then colleges and so on throughout that. But I always wanted to go to college, and at the time I was playing in a Polynesian act every Saturday and Sunday in a restaurant supper club. So I didn't go away to college. I went and got my degree through local colleges, graduated with a finance degree. And at the time there was a recession, and I was offered a position as an inventory analyst for Nabisco. And I thought, well, I don't know what that has to do with finance. I'll go make Oreos or something for a few years. And next thing you know, I'm in this distribution department in a customer service office for Nabisco. And that's how I started my logistics career. So you never know, where your path is going to take you. One decision or one thing that happens in your life, and bang, it sets you on a different course.
Wow. That is very common for people of our generation to have kind of fallen backwards into supply chain. We hear that story all the time. I mean, I don't think people realize there weren't supply chain degrees until probably the 2000s.
Yeah.
So, and only in the last 10, 15 years, really, except for some of the early schools. But it's interesting how people have come to it. I also got to say, if my father had a pizza joint, I would never leave. I would make the band practice there.
That's right.
So
well,
we
to
were
this
just-
day, I make his recipe on Sundays, and I got to thinking about MRP and DRP. You know, how many pizzas do you have to make? Well, that's forecasting. What do you put on it? Well, you need raw materials and ingredients, and you know, right away, that's kind of part of manufacturing, the oven and distribution, delivery. So maybe I was destined for logistics at a very early age and had no idea.
You know, it's funny how many people tie it back to that, to something they did. We've had people tie it back to their paper route and speed and early, you know, an early start and efficiency and things like that, because he wanted to get back to bed. Chris Gaffney from Coca-Cola told us that.
Sure.
But yeah, so that's interesting stuff. And it is amazing how it kind of all ties together, and how, as you said, Rick, you never know what's going to lead you there. So did it turn out that finance was valuable in your early stage?
It really was. I remember, think about, you know, how back then we had to understand how much inventory to keep in the distribution network for anticipated sales and shipments and so on. And I learned about algorithms on safety stock. And as I got a little more senior in my career, I learned about the financial aspects of carrying inventory and so on. And through it all, ended up with different jobs, went to run a distribution center in Chesapeake, Virginia. And back then they walked in and said, they want you to run a distribution center in Chesapeake, Virginia. And there wasn't a lot of discussion. You know, the next Monday you were in Chesapeake, Virginia. And I think that was a seminal moment in my career where I had a budget, I was a general manager, I had people, I had a union to deal with, and you really learn very quickly at a young age how to run a business. So the financial aspect of what I learned did kick in. So for those of you out there wondering if your degree is ever going to be used in your chosen career, it likely will be. You will draw on that later on in life without knowing it. But that career was, you know, you went to, as long as you continued to make progress and have different levels of responsibility as I did, and different experiences, there is no replacement for that actual experience. And I learned that early on in my career.
That's really valuable. So aside from Nabisco, was there anywhere else that you went before you wound up at CSCMP?
Well, so I lived through the RJR acquisition of Nabisco, and then the KKR leverage buyout of RJR Nabisco. And through all those, you're always like, well, when am I going to continue on with this company? How's that going to work? But I ultimately did. And then Philip Morris owned Kraft. Kraft and Nabisco merged, which is how I came back to Chicago to run supply chain for Kraft Foods North America for a number of years. And then ConAgra Foods was trying to consolidate disparate companies and build out a network and install SAP. And they had invited me to come join them. And I worked for Bruce Rohde at the time, was the CEO and chairman of ConAgra for a number of years. But I wanted to stay in Chicago because I was gone for 16 years. My father at the time was still alive. And I said, you know, I'm not going to go to Omaha, which is where they were headquartered. And they said, no, we want you to run the operation in Chicago. Did that for a few years, and we consolidated everything in Omaha. At the time, I was on the board of directors of CSCMP. I left ConAgra in very good terms, and had a contract for another 18 months to play out. And at the time, the woman that was running CSCMP, Maria McIntyre, was retiring. So the board said, well, hey, why don't you do this? I said, hey, look, I'm passionate about supply. I love the organization, but I'm a corporate callous, kill the competition kind of a guy. You know, I don't know if I'm going to fit in, but no, you run it like a business, and we'll see where that goes. And that was 2005. So I thought I'd do that for a few years, and here I am 15 years later.
That's amazing how that works, isn't it? It's again, you never know where you're going to wind up.
That's right.
So, well, tell us, through all of that, I know you had quite an awakening when you took over the DC in Chesapeake, right?
Sure.
Chesapeake, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about any sort of epiphanal or eureka moments or awakenings that you had that really stand out to you. Well,
one of the things I've learned, and I'm very passionate about, is most people think logistics is a cost to be managed if they don't understand what it is. That's just trucks. That's trucking. You know, go get another truck. Don't carry too much inventory. Make sure the inventory is where it's supposed to be. How come the inventory isn't made and placed where it's supposed to be? All of that is a science, and it's operational, and it's real. And I think, as I've learned through my career, explaining what we do in terms that our colleagues can understand is paramount. If you walk around saying seamless fluid, fully integrated, satisfying the needs of our customers at the lowest total delivered cost, A supply chain professional can dissect that sentence. Someone who is in marketing or a business unit president is going to look at you and just sort of shake their head.
Yeah, their eyes glaze over.
So you learn how to convert your language to what's meaningful for them around customer service, around inventory management and having the right inventory at the right moment. That's why in every presentation I give, I always stop and say, how many of you have been to the grocery store in the last 2 weeks? All the hands go up. I say, how many of you only bought what you went in there to buy? And all the hands go down. Right. So think about that. We have all this behavioral science and forecasting and all this replenishment activity. And you as the consumer are so crazed out, you go into a store and come out with something you had no intention of buying. And we're supposed to have that there for you. That's agile and flexible and supply chain and being proactive around inventory and managing our service expectations.
So yeah, that's a really good insight into, something I discovered, honestly studied for decades, is we always talk about things, Rick, like what this item did or this item's seasonality or how this item is performing. And the truth is we're not forecasting items at all. We're forecasting that consumer and what they're going to do when they walk in the store or when they hit the site or whatever kind of customer you have, right? Whether you're a manufacturer selling to distributors or a manufacturer selling to consumers or a retailer. You have, what you're really doing is trying to predict the actions of that consumer. And that is so difficult because even the consumer couldn't have predicted they were going to grab that Snickers bar or pack of Oreos on the way out. I could have predicted that of me.
And sometimes that's marketing doing its job, right?
Yeah.
Create demand where there is no demand.
Yeah, that's right. And it's everywhere. Those influences are what you've got to assess, right? Those things that influence us to buy. That's an interesting topic. I don't want to derail us there, but that's a great and enlightening and frankly a good way to relay it to consumers, is to recognize that you don't know what you're going to get when you come in a store. How could a retailer?
Right.
I want to go back to what I heard earlier and some what you were sharing there as you were sharing some of the jargon that supply chain practitioners know and love and talk to each other in. Rick, before we kind of broaden the conversation, would you argue that the art of communication and communication kind of in layman's terms is a skill that is more important today for supply chain professionals than even it was maybe a couple of years ago?
I think it is. And entering the game, you have data analytics. We have all these tools and systems and all of that to try to help run your supply chain. And we know where our inventory is. Explaining it and educating people about what it is difficult. Whenever the next cocktail party you're at, ask your neighbor, whoever, what's the last thing you bought? Well, I bought a pair of shoes. Well, how do you think they got there? Well, from the back room. Well, how do you think they got to the back room? And that's when the eyes glaze over.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody realizes when you're at a train stop and there's a train going by, what's on it? Or why are these trucks on these roads? And, all of that is, as I like to call, sometimes our counsel, I call this, but certainly supply chain, we're the wire between the switch and the light. You flip the switch, a light goes on. You don't call your power company up and thank them because you expect that light to go on.
Right.
It's kind of like that.
I love that.
Magic happens. It shows up and nobody knows what's going on with that wire between the switch and the light.
I love that. Along the lines of what you're sharing, and one of the silver linings that Greg, we talked extensively about of 2020, of this pandemic environment, are consumer folks that have never touched supply chain are connecting the dots, understanding what it is. Our dear Aunt Robin and our family, who's been in the healthcare industry for, I'm not going to date her, for several decades. She's at Emory, fighting a good fight, right, on the front lines of what, and she reached out a week or two ago and said, Scott, I finally understand what supply chain is. And that was such, these little things are so important, and they're great signals for the industry, I believe. So, and again, I want to thank everybody that might be listening that is in healthcare, doing a good, fighting a good fight. All right, so Rick, let's broaden the conversation. As we're all alluding to, there's no shortage of topics, developments, and challenges in global supply chain in any given year, certainly in 2020. But what's at the top of the list? What are you and the CSCMP tracking, the most here lately?
Well, you've had pre-COVID, post-COVID, right? Now we're in COVID. And so everybody wants to talk about that. And I get that. I completely understand it. I personally think our supply chain has been pretty resilient through all of this, through all of the original shortages of toilet paper. And by the way, I was interviewed so many times about that. When you take, I don't know, 25, 30 million people who travel 80, 90% of the time, and you say, stay home, where do they go to buy their toilet paper? To the same store we go to buy our toilet paper, which is different than what they were using in hotels and restaurants and schools and so on and so forth. So some hoarding occurred, but a lot of it was a shift in the type of product, and therefore manufacturing lines had to shift and make a different ply of toilet paper and other food products and so on. So a couple of things. We had a race to automation and robotics and technology because of labor, shortages of labor. Not just truck drivers. Everybody wants to talk about the devastating truck driver anticipated shortage. We've been talking about that for years and years and years. And yes, that's an issue. But there are also shortages of labor in manufacturing facilities, distribution facilities, and elsewhere. So technology has helped us by allowing hurdle rates for robotics and automation to come down and employ that in distribution centers versus where we might have thrown people at it. So that will still occur as the economy comes back and our operations continue to kick in. And then just understanding how to connect all those distribution centers with more e-commerce activity, different channels of distribution is all the rage as well. And supply chain people are really good at figuring that out. And we understand if e-commerce as a percentage of retail was 15%, it's going to be 25 or 30%. What do I have to do about that? We can model that. We can reposition inventory. It's why you see, companies, I think Amazon was talking about buying some distribution centers that came up. JCPenney distribution centers.
Oh, right.
So,
in the malls, right?
Yeah, because now they become piles of inventory closer to the consumer. So there's all those types of things that go on in this big mixer called supply chain that people are figuring out. And so right now we're in the middle of an anticipated economic recovery. And what's going to be different pre-COVID? Is it the level of e-commerce? Is it how people shop? Are they going to be willing to go to malls and retail space to look at garments and look at things the way they used to? Or is it going to shift? But the supply chain folks are really good at figuring that out.
Absolutely. It is interesting just how far we've come from a forecasting, a planning, and although there always be we don't have a perfect crystal ball, and probably never will, although maybe next week we will. I don't know. Technology is moving fast, but it's amazing how shrewd and savvy folks that are really, looking at, accumulating the data, paying close attention to the signal. So it's amazing just how fast and innovative the discipline has gotten when it comes to forecasting and planning and those things. And Greg, I know you're the head of the deacons at the First Church of Planning and Forecasting. So this is just something you're passionate about. What when Rick was sharing some of those things they're tracking, what comes to your mind?
Well, first of all, I think that the problem-solving capability of supply chain professionals is foremost. Nothing ever goes right. The truth be told, if you're overstocked, it's supply chain's fault. If you're out of stock, it's supply chain fault. If something happens to go right, thank goodness for that sales team. So, you get used to preempting. It's almost self-preservation. You get used to preempting, predicting, and preventing failures in the supply chain. And that's why I think it has been so resilient during this period. And you can expect it to continue to be, even if you look at how the paper industry staggered, 700-800% increase in sales literally overnight. They staggered, but they weren't knocked out. So that's a really impressive recovery. And that's the other point, right? It's not just about forecasting. It's not just about planning. Everyone has a plan, as the great philosopher Mike Tyson said, until they get punched in the face.
Right.
So resilience and responsiveness are critical aspects of supply chain as well. And automation to that is absolutely necessary, because as we all know, any supply chain expert knows, it's not a matter of whether your forecast is wrong, it's how wrong is it.
Right.
And resilience and responsiveness is all about counteracting the wrongness of your forecast, and also dealing with some of the things that Rick has alluded to as well, those constraints in the marketplace. If you need a case of beer, you don't order a case of beer as a distributor, you order a pallet. So you have to think about things like that as well as you convert demand in the stream upstream. The volumes shift, right? So
yep.
That makes a very, very complex relationship that automation helps with a tremendous amount.
Well, the other thing is the environment. I was reading just the other day, I believe it was the head of a retail supply chain was talking about how typically when they'd have big increases in demand, they would go on a hiring spree, right? Fill their warehouses and fulfillment centers with new people. But in this environment, of course, that can't happen as easily. As challenging that is, it's even a greater challenge in this environment with social distancing and other discipline, the other protocols they've got to put in place. So naturally, they've doubled and tripled down on automation rather than try to, onboard all of those folks in this challenging environment. So the automation trend is only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But Rick, before we shift gears over to the talent pipeline, because it might not be intuitive, but this massive embrace of automation and technology, it's going to be a great thing for the talent industry and supply chain, because it's going to bring more of the top talent. It's going to create a ton of new opportunities. It's going to move the industry forward, and that's going to mean a lot more jobs. So sometimes in these conversations we get trapped that automation means it kills opportunities, but the way we look at it, it's going to open a door for a massive amount of new opportunities, right?
It's adding jobs to the supply chain in total. Absolutely. When you look at the companies that will be part of our supply chain exchange, if you will, at our conference, who are innovating and coming up with new ideas for us to employ within our supply chain, it's great people with great engineering and innovative minds who are creating this. And that's just a different type of role within supply chain than someone who is a forecast analyst or an inventory analyst or a transportation manager. So that's why careers in supply chain are so broad, and we have to do a much better, I know we're going to talk about that, better job of bringing awareness to what it is that we all do. But technology has allowed us to become more productive. If you look at our annual State of Logistics report, which is the definitive costs and trends driving logistics in the US, 31 years now, it has come down from 19% back in the 80s to 8% now of our GDP. We are much more effective and efficient with our logistics dollars. And that is because of the people and the technology and the ability to work together and collaborate across the multiple functions of supply chain.
It's the industry is evolving perhaps in a way that's never been seen before, especially at a rate that arguably has never been seen before. So, but it's an exciting time to be in industry, despite the challenges everyone's dealing with. This is an exciting time to be in supply chain, and with no shortage of opportunities. So, especially for folks that embrace that change, it's going to be challenging if you're used to the same role in the same way, and that if 8 to 5 still exists, I don't know. But for folks that are open to change, willing to step through the door and take it and seize the opportunity, man, this is an exciting time.
Absolutely.
So, Greg and Rick, let's talk talent. Because the flip side of the exciting stuff that Rick and really both of y'all are speaking to, it's going to take the top talent to move the industry forward. And I've heard it been said a number of different ways that the supply chain industry is competing for absolute top talent that in ways that it never has. So, Rick, what are you seeing successful companies that are serious about onboarding talent? What are they doing?
Well, first of all, they're constantly educating them, and their senior supply chain leaders are allowing them to go through and experience the supply chain within their company. If you think about it, there are, 6 jobs to every supply chain graduate coming out of our major universities. And they're getting job offers 8 to 10 months before they graduate. So we've got to cultivate the talent that we have now that may not have had a supply chain degree. And we have tools to do that. That's one of the reasons CSCMP has been around. Our goal is to connect, educate, and develop the world's supply chain professionals, and we keep refreshing our portfolio of education in order to do that because it continues to change. So we've got to cultivate the talent that we have in-house, provide them the ability to learn to lead people and lead functions, and then understand how the functions connect together. How does manufacturing and procurement work together to produce the inventory that Greg White has forecasted that we need in these nodules downstream? And then the transportation folks will get it there. So we always talk about that horizontal flow of inventory and information. It really is. It is a physical flow. And I think sometimes we forget that. You know, we all like to talk about the greatest technology that, you know, we're employing in our supply chain. But until we figure out molecular decoupling and we're able to produce a product in your stomach so we don't have to ship it to you, we're going to have to move it, produce it, raw materials, ingredients, packaging supplies, consolidate it to take advantage of transportation synergies, move it downstream into a facility to consolidate it with other manufactured products, and move it down in a retail corner where somebody's going to buy it, where we can consume it. That physical move still happens. And while that still happens, we've got to consider that and the potential for damage and, you know, so on and so forth, and protecting that product throughout its life.
So, man, you are hardcore.
I'm sorry.
No. That's, I think that was brilliant, but you are as described, right? You said you are a competition killer. You have clearly a very deep understanding and passion for this, and I love that.
Yeah,
I just love it.
You know, Greg, it's interesting. We've done so many of these together, and you and I were on the same wavelength there. As Rick was sharing a couple times during the interview so far already, his passion is just exudes. Rick, this is why we do this. I mean, I love folks that have a passion, especially for supply chain, the people, the technologies, what's going on in the industry. So this gets our juices going. All right.
Can I go back to just one real quick point, Scott? I hope we never get to a point of molecular decoupling.
Something like that.
Where a piece of pizza appears in my stomach, because I enjoy eating it way too much. Anyone else?
That's right. I'm with you on that.
I'm jealous of your
deep dish, or, you know.
It will happen, Rick. It probably will happen, not in our lifetimes, but it will happen in the future. And I am sad for people who don't get to taste and chew and enjoy pizza.
I'm jealous of Rick's family every Sunday as he bakes his father's secret recipe.
You know, when you come to Atlanta, come a week early.
I will make some of that.
Yeah,
it's all about the dough.
We'll host you.
Yes. Pizza supply chain. All right, so let's we're going to talk about CSCMP in a minute. They give folks a clear understanding beyond what Rick's already shared of what the organization does, and a big event coming up just around the corner. But talent, you know, I want to stick to talent just for a second here. Rick, what else are you seeing leading companies, again, that are really serious? You know, there's so many companies out there, not naming names at all, but they're mailing it in. They believe it's 2002. You know, the right people are going to find them. That's just not reality. What else are you seeing really companies that get it doing?
You know, I think the top companies who are able to retain the best talent have an individual development plan for each person. And I was a big proponent of that. You know, if you want to be a supply chain leader and it's going to take X number of years for you to reach that goal, whatever that is in your mind, then we've got to get you there. We've got to give you the experience, the ability to work within and around the supply chain, certainly the technical skills, and don't underestimate the interpersonal skills necessary in order to be effective. How do I go communicate with someone in marketing or manufacturing who may have a different objective than mine? And you have to sit down and explain, not everything is driven by a computer or a black box. They help us, we all know that, but at some point, you have to go align your goals and objectives with that of your colleague in order to reach the common goals and objectives that you need for your company to succeed. That requires interpersonal skills and the ability to communicate one-on-one to bring your goals and objectives together. And sometimes there are goals that are simply in conflict. And I have multiple stories of looking at bonusable objectives of marketing, manufacturing, procurement, myself, and supply chain, and laying them out there and having the top HR people say, wow, these goals are completely in conflict. how come marketing doesn't have customer service goals? I mean, manufacturing just wants to make a bunch of inventory. The more they make, the lower their unit cost. Rick, what happens if you don't need it? Well, it sits there and absorbs costs. So you really got to get into the guts of how people are incented to behave in order to do that. And I think the top companies have figured out that they've got to align people, and they've got to get experience, and they've got to get interpersonal skills and get people to communicate, to really think about the ultimate goal of satisfying our customer and lowering our total costs across the supply chain, and doing it with the same goals in mind.
Well put. Well put.
Yeah, that interactivity between departments is so critical. Look, I was in retail, and I was in merchandising at one point and in supply chain. And you want to talk about goals at cross purposes, they are significant, right? My job at one point was just bring in as many new products as possible and let them fly. Let's see how they do. And those stacked up in, those are where we were wrong. They stacked up in the distribution center or in the stores. And we weren't incentivized to stop that proliferation of SKUs, which is another topic we're talking about these days, and to rationalize that SKU rate. We would leave slow movers out there because it didn't hurt my bonus to leave them out there. It hurt my bonus to lose sales or to lose gross margin return on investment. So we have to align those goals between all of those departments to get what we want and create a better vision throughout the organization.
And sometimes if you're a publicly traded company, I remember being in meetings and either I or someone would ask, how many New York Stock Exchange ticker symbols do we have? And someone would say 1. So, well, isn't it to our best overall benefit to work together in order to improve earnings per share, increase the stock price, and do all of that? Of course. Well, why are we not doing that? So what's preventing us from doing that and really getting to the guts of the matter? But that requires conversation.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it is the motivation that you put around pay, right? Or recognition on the job. I mean, that has to be aligned to get what we want.
Right.
There's so many areas I want to take a deeper dive on some of the things that you're sharing, but for the sake of time, let's keep moving here. Rick, we'll have to have you back, and we'll take a deep dive into some of these things from a practitioner standpoint. SKU rationalization alone could be a weekly series based on some of the schools of thought and some of the execution we're seeing here lately. All right. So let's talk about CSCMP and make sure folks that for all 4 people maybe that haven't heard of your organization, let's make sure they understand the value proposition and why folks get involved.
Yep. Founded in 1963, back then from forward-thinking academics and practitioners that wanted to create a professional association focused on this newly found field called physical distribution. It was founded as the National Council of Physical Distribution Management, then evolved into the Council of Logistics Management, now into the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals. And as I often say, if we find life on Mars, we'll be the Intergalactic Council of Planetary Needs of some sort. But that connection with unbiased research, with academia, and therefore students and young professionals, and advancing our noble mission of advancing logistics and supply chain and the careers of everyone in it by connecting, educating, and developing everyone around the world through our programs, through our roundtables, which are our local chapters around the world. We're a membership-based organization, individual members, corporate members. When you're a member of this family, you pick up the phone and recognize yourself as one, you get an answer. We're able to provide connections, which is so important, let alone our professional education and development. And then, of course, all of our events. But as I said, it's that wire between the switch and the light. You flip the switch, a light goes on. Well, there's some CSCMP connection somewhere where, I needed a job and I got a new assignment, or there's somebody's looking for some folks in this area, and they're able to access them and find them through our organization. Or a new company wants to know what type of third-party provider does this. We can do that and connect people around the world in that way as well. So it's just a great organization with a lot of high energy people who care and are unwavering in their dedication to help us with that mission.
We agree, or I agree. Here locally in Atlanta, we've really enjoyed Dave Maddox and Sandy Lake, who are both board members on the local roundtable. You said it well. I mean, good people that know their stuff and believe in giving back, and as Greg says, giving forward. Because you know, these associations like CSCMP, they offer you credentials and professional development opportunities and networking opportunities, which all of those three things alone are so important to move your career forward.
That's right.
So
That's right.
good stuff there. All right. Greg, do you want to chime in before we talk to Rick about CSCMP Edge?
Yeah, I'd just like to address just real quickly the talent thing, because I think the thing that we have to acknowledge is that we went from full employment, statistical
Right.
full employment, right? And the shortage that Rick is talking about was very, very real. And now I think with supply chain in the forefront of all of this discussion, it's pretty much COVID, and supply chain. So, I mean, if you think about it for consumers, so with people in job transition, millions and millions of people in job transition, and the number of opportunities in supply chain, I could see us having the discussion that you two were just talking about. I could see us having access to some really, really strong professionals who never thought, like none of us did,
right?
Never thought of supply chain as a career until this moment. So,
we interact with some of those folks on our live streams, Greg, and some of the other conversations we're having.
Yeah, we see it in real time.
Absolutely. And you know, we had a trend there going for a while where CTOs found themselves in supply chain, a lot of technology leaders, because of the current state of the industry. So I think that's a great point you're making, Greg, and it's good for people because it's going to be great opportunities in a new sector maybe for them, and it's great for the industry because you're going to get new outside fresh eyes that is so important to problem solving and innovation, all other things that we've got to do in supply chain, right, Rick?
Yeah, well, and your skills are portable. If you have great analytical skills, that can apply to so many different areas of supply chain. If you have a passion for transportation, I know you spoke with Gail Rukowski not long ago, our division called NASTRAC, which is focused on advocacy for North American shipping and transportation. There's people that transportation is 63-64% of total logistics costs. We need good, solid transportation thinkers and thought leaders. But there's so many other jobs that you can get into that you just may not think about until you really understand careers in supply chain. We got some great information on our website about that, but we're going to continue to need more people, which is why, one of my passions is how do we get it into lower levels of our educational system as a destination career, so you don't stumble across it in college and yet you know about it in high school or even earlier.
Great point. Huge really point there. Point. And Greg, you and I have spent some time in elementary schools talking supply chain, which was fascinating. But Rick, you nailed it, because I love supply chain. I love manufacturing. I love all the different components that make up end-to-end supply chain. But it was after college and after I spent a couple of years in the Air Force before I ever stepped foot in my first facility, 300 tours ago, 300 visits ago. And that can't happen if we want to grow the industry, and we've got to move it, just like you said, we got to move it upstream so that folks aren't uncovering that in their mid-20s.
Exactly.
Well, exactly. We're really not pushing a rope anymore, and that's the good news, right? People know about supply chain. People are interested in supply chain. It's in the forefront of things, and there are hundreds of supply chain programs at universities just in the States. So there's a great opportunity to be exposed at an early age. You're being exposed to it every day. Even as a kid, if you watch Netflix or you watch the news, I'm sorry, if you're a kid, please don't watch the news. But you hear about it every day and probably have learned about it over the kitchen table, which is really how careers get started.
That's right.
Right.
Good point.
Those discussions that you have over the kitchen table among your family are those, or wherever you have breakfast nowadays, are those that get ingrained into you. And that discussion has been happening. We're out of toilet paper, they're overstocked on X, or whatever discussion has been being had. I can't find a mask. Those kinds of discussions are being had, and that is being ingrained in the psyche of kids today. So I think we're in a good spot.
Yeah, certainly better off. We've come a long way. And as we've talked about before, when we hear a leading food retailer incorporate supply chain in their commercials, that's a beautiful thing.
The whole commercial was about supply chain. Right. So,
all right.
So Rick, let's talk about getting these people together when they're adults. So physical events they've vanished, frankly, but I have a feeling they're going to start coming back. And I know you have Edge every year, and it's coming to Atlanta, right? In 2021.
That's correct.
So tell us a little bit about what Edge is, whether you think we'll actually physically get together there, and and how people can participate.
Well, this year we would have been in Orlando, 3,000 people from 45 different countries, high energy, hearing presentations from their colleagues, members by members. It's a very volunteer-driven organization, volunteer-driven event. And of course, like many, this year we had a shift to a virtual conference. But this is not going to be a webinar. This is a truly interactive, it's why we're calling it Edge 2020 Live event, where you can go and hear keynote speakers. Our Monday keynote speaker is Eric Taramundi, who's going to be talking about the future of work. On Tuesday, we're going to hear from Target's Executive Vice President and Chief Supply Chain Officer, Arthur Valdez, who's just got a fascinating story to talk through. And we'll have a lot of different panels, 22 different tracks, over 120 sessions that you can see. And they're going to be available to our attendees for 90 days afterwards as well. So when you think at a physical event, you might only be able to see one session at a time. Obviously here, you're going to have access to our portfolio of really top shelf people talking about what's going on in their supply chain today. So it's called Edge 2020 Live. It'll be from September 20th to the 23rd online. You can register right now, and it's a price point that everyone can manage from wherever you're at in the world. And it's truly going to be interactive, just really cool platform that we have chosen to do this. And I'm really excited about it. Excited for people who would otherwise maybe not have the wherewithal to come to a physical conference, who can now do this from wherever they sit on whatever continent, afford it and get access to all of that great content. So CSCMPedge.org is the place to go to register. Please do that. You will be able to connect with so many people who will become long-term relationships for you. And our members and our presenters are so cool about answering any questions and connecting with you afterward. So we're really looking forward. It's going to be a real cool event.
So we have seen a lot of organizations, because of this environment, open their events to everyone. So do you need to be a member to attend, or?
No, you don't need to be a member. You can join and become a member and get access to different pricing, but all the other reports and things that we have for our members. Like I mentioned, our State of Logistics report, we've got a lot of other great information for our members. So I'd urge everyone to take advantage of the membership opportunities we have now. Register for Edge, but you'll get a year-long opportunity to get access to the greatest information that our academics and practitioners build on a daily basis. And the connections. There's, you can't say enough about the connections that, people send an email, hey, I'm a CSCMP member. Hey, I am too. Where are you? And let's talk. And then, of course, our roundtable events, when they go back into in-person events, are great local places to get to know people as well, as you mentioned earlier.
That's great.
So, huge opportunity.
It is.
Connecting, educating, developing. I clung to those three words you said earlier, because that really, that's what I've experienced in getting out there and interacting with various associations and including CSCMP. And I like how you said it's not going to be a webinar. That's why we're calling it CSCMP Edge Live, where a true virtual, remote but in-person event. It's going to be a showstopper for sure. All right, so CSCMPedge.org for the event.
Correct.
And then CSCMP.org to learn more information about the organization, right?
Absolutely. It's all right there for you.
Perfect.
And then how can folks get in touch with you, Rick?
Hey, R. Blasgen at CSCMP.org. We're all listed there on the website. I'd love to talk and get feedback and find out what's going on with each individual who cares about this industry as I do, this discipline, and cares about organizations like CSCMP. Sometimes I think associations are one of the first things that people go, well, do I need that? I got the internet. I can type in supply chain excellence and all this stuff comes back. It must be true because it's on the internet. Well, I don't know. I don't know how you take the conversation like this that happens all the time and provide it to people without the personal interaction, the desire to make and improve your supply chain life and get careers going. That's what organizations like CSCMP does. We care. I know we're noble about it, but we're passionate about it. We care about this discipline. We care about everybody in it. We care about the young professionals, and then the long loyals, the more senior level people who are always giving back. You can count on them to be there for you, and that's the essence of CSCMP.
Yeah, and you need a place to go for things like this.
I love it. I love the passion and huge opportunity for folks. So Rick, I know you got several full plates. I'm so glad that you carved out some time to spend with us here. It's been a pleasure. And I hate to kind of wind the interview down because it feels like the three of us could go grab another cup of coffee and have a fascinating couple hours long conversation, but we'll save that for another day. Rick Blasgen, President and CEO of CSCMP, the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals. Learn more at cscmp.org. And of course, the big extravaganza coming up, cscmpedge.org. So thanks so much, Rick.
Thank you, guys. And thanks for the great work that you guys do. It's important to our industry. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks for joining us.
Greg, give you the last word before we sign off here. I mean, I'm ready to go run through some walls. How about you?
Yeah, man. It's another one of those situations where you think, man, we need to get this cat back into industry running a supply chain. And I know that's not in the cards. So hopefully it's not anyway for you, Rick. But just amazing an amazing recognition of the kind of skills that we've got in supply chain here. Someone who longtime practitioner, but still kind of like so many of us fell backwards into the industry, found a passion for it, tied it to his core gifts, and made his way in the industry, all the way from some of the largest companies in industry to leading, guiding, and educating companies like that now. So really impressive path. And we need to explore that guitar thing just a little bit more.
And pizza. Don't forget the pizza. Don't forget the pizza. All right. So to our listeners, hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation as much as we have. You can learn more about us at supplychainnowradio.com and find us and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. Hey, we want to wrap this up like we always do by challenging you, just like we challenge our own team and our own selves. Hey, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. And on that note, we'll see you next time here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.